All right, Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports and the Pod to Win the Game is here with us. So, Charles, of course, concussions are top of mind for everybody. Thanks to Tua Tagovailoa, both the hit he took against Buffalo and then the awful scene against Cincinnati on Thursday night. That was Mike McDaniel announcing that he is out for Week 5 against the Jets. We saw Cameron Brate go out last night and re-enter the game when it was obvious to anybody watching that he had suffered a head injury. He was removed and put in concussion protocol. The UNC, the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant, has been fired. The protocols are under review and expected to be revised as the investigation into the handling of Tua goes on. Charles, what do you know and what do you think about where the league, the Players Association, really just the sport is on the issue of concussions in the aftermath of the Tua Tagovailoa controversy?
Well, I think I don't want to say enhanced emphasis this weekend was kind of interesting, because when you go back and you look at the first 3 weeks of the season, including week 3, which obviously was the game against the Bills when Tua went through the neurological test and was put back in the game against the Bills. I think it was 3 players in week 3 went through the protocols and were benched. Okay. Going through concussion protocols. I'm fairly certain that weeks 1 and 2 were also low single digit instances. Mm-hmm. Sunday alone, it was 12. 12 players went through protocols and were benched after going through the neurological testing. I think it's really interesting that all of a sudden there's this advanced emphasis on it, and it goes from 3 in week 3 to quadrupling, and that's not even counting Thursday night, obviously, with Tua's injury against the Cincinnati Bengals, but it quadruples. And a couple of things. Number one, it leads me to believe that maybe the emphasis that was put in on Sunday was not really being put in prior weeks. Number two, it leads me to believe that if we are headed toward an era, we'll see if the league, what the tweaks are between the NFL and the NFLPA, and whether or not this actually is something that everyone adheres to for more than a month or two. But it leads me to believe that Sunday might be representative of what this looks like moving forward, where you're seeing more players who are benched. Also, what I thought was interesting too was when you looked at the way that players ended up going through the protocols and being benched, like for example, the Giants, Tyrod Taylor, it's a referee who says, nope, Carl Sheffers says you're off, takes him off the field, puts him into protocols. I think they had a safety that it was actually the spotter, the NFL's the concussion spotter said, nope, pull him. And, so you kind of saw this wide array of how players, and then Cameron Brate, that played out on Sunday night where it appeared something wasn't right. He goes back in the game. Now Todd Bowles has come out and said, well, it was the symptoms were sort of delayed or whatever. I'm not a brain specialist, so it's hard to know what a delayed concussion symptom looks like. But I think we can safely say that it was clearly something that needed to be worked on between the NFL and the NFLPA. And it's unfortunate that it took the Bills game and then the Cincinnati Bengals game with Tua to sort of get to this point. And it remains to be seen, once this is worked on, we've gone through this before. Will this be something that's an emphasis for a month, for 2 months? What happens when we get into the playoffs and another Julian Edelman situation happens? Is a player taken out of a key game, the Super Bowl?
Or do some players push back? Do some players end up pushing? Do we overcorrect to a point, Michael, to where players are like, dog, every time we hit our heads, you can't take us out the game. It might be too much of an overcorrection, but because everybody's watching so closely, Michael.
Yeah, this is our livelihood. But I do want to ask you, I know you're tossing to me, Mike, and I'm going to toss it right back to you and Charles, because I want to hear both of your perspectives on this. Mike, you were in Cincinnati for this game when this happened. I just wonder, did you get a sense, and do either of you get a sense that something will change from the players? Either players saying, hey, we got to keep him out of the game. Forget about what the doctors say. Players protecting each other, or players getting more creative, some of them are like this with hiding how hurt they are.
I'm glad you asked that.
And so, I want to know from both of you what you think on that.
So, Charles, I'll quickly say this and then give it to you. My understanding is that there has been a culture shift by and large when it comes to players self-reporting. As in, I'll throw out a number that I've been told, like around 70% the last couple of years, I believe it is, players are starting to report the concussion. Reported concussions are self-reported. So somebody's not feeling well, they are speaking up more than traditionally they have, or more than we might assume that these gladiators do. So from a player perspective, by and large, it feels like they're more cognizant and conscious of the risks here with head injuries. I don't know. What do you think to that end, Charles?
Well, that's a statistic that, remember, it's you're talking about a very finite statistic. I mean, that's only players. That's reported, right? So we don't know unreported. Right. So it could be, hey, we had 10 players who reported, but we had 100 who didn't, and so it really doesn't resolve anything. I actually thought the Thursday night broadcast, Michael, that you were part of was interesting because Andrew Whitworth, I thought, spoke to a big part of the problem where he said, look, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he talked about being concussed in a game against the Philadelphia Eagles and getting himself back in the game. And I do think that is an avenue that up until now, there has not been enough emphasis put on how are players interacting with this process and then getting themselves, back in football.
They have ways. I've heard of players. I've heard of one player who's no longer in the league. Whenever he got a concussion, he immediately grabbed his ankle. Like they have systems to beat the system.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that is the question about the Bills game, right? And now I know there's no shortage of South Florida reporters that seems like coming out and saying it's just a coincidence. It was absolutely a back injury. Everything's come back clean. It wasn't a concussion. Your eyes are lying to you. And yet, again, when he enters into the protocol, right, when he goes to the sideline, the team announces it's a head injury, and then it becomes a back injury. Okay. Right. And so to me, there's a reason why. I hope this comes out in terms of why the process and the neurologist and why what steps weren't necessarily followed or the mistakes that were made. Because what I want to know is, okay, this was a back injury. What was done for the back injury, right? I mean, it wasn't a head injury, right? It was a back injury. So what did you do to treat the back injury?
Good question.
How was it diagnosed?
Great question.
Right. That's one of the questions that they're going to ask. I was just going to say, if it was a back injury and you knew it was a back injury, then why did we find out over the weekend that he was examined for concussion every day last week? We found out after the fact.
Right.
That he was examined for concussion every day.
He continued to be evaluated for concussion after it was determined it was a back injury. Right. And he checked in.
So why are you checking?
The thing is, it's always going to be imperfect. Okay. I think we have to live with the reality that there's human beings involved and the players are involved. And I do think that Bills game is actually a good microcosm of when you look at the players, somebody who's been under fire, someone who's got momentum this season, someone who's fighting for his job. And this was the biggest game, arguably, of his career. And
the Tua thing, too. Yeah.
I could
personality,
see an individual. And
Yeah.
Andrew Whitworth spoke to it. I wanted to be in there playing. That's why I went back in, because as a player, you want to be out there playing. And I tried to make the point that you are dealing with athletes who are conditioned for the expanse of their entire careers, from high school to college to the NFL. You sacrifice yourself for the team first. And it's hard to eventually override that.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.